Morning, Codge Bike here. There's a little clue as to where I'm going. I'm going over there. In fact, I'm not sure. That church over there could possibly be where I'm headed. So, got to go into town, go through the city centre to the Queensway Tunnel, and then head over there. Time flies by when you're the rider of a bike, and you sit in the traffic there and back alike. Which reminds me, where I'm going today, when I was a little boy, I absolutely loved all the Trumpton programmes. You probably don't know what they are. You will if you're my age. We had Camberwick Green, Trumpton itself, and Chigley, which that song is from, which is a train song. And they presented a sort of idyllic version of life in England, or yeah, it was England, I think. Camberwick Green was the countryside, Trumpton was the town, and Chigley, I think, was the industrial one, and all the factory workers would come out after a day at work, which seemed to be the happiest place you could possibly be, and then they'd have a little dance. They didn't have a choice in it. I think the boss and his butler would organise it. Like the bandstand, little dance, and off you went home. And I often wonder whether those ideas were sort of founded on where I'm going today. Anyway, here's the old tunnel. You can see the bus has to go in the middle because the curve is, I think the bus would hit it. But I'm okay on my motorbike. Okay, so here we are in Port Sunlight. I'll tell you about it as I ride at 20 miles an hour everywhere. Ahead of us is the Lady Lever Art Gallery, which was built by Lord Lever Home, I think his name was. I think the Home was his wife's name and Lever was his surname. He was a Victorian industrialist. He was very, very, very successful, made soap. I remember Sunlight washing up liquid, but they made all sorts, particularly when they joined up with Unilever in the 30s. They just about make everything that you see in a supermarket now. So in there is the art gallery, the Lady Lever Art Gallery, named after his dead wife at the time. She died. Shows you money doesn't give you immortality, apart from in buildings, for a while anyway. Ask the Egyptians. So in there's pre-Raphaelite paintings, various other parts of his collection. I particularly remember one painting there that sticks in my mind, called The Scapegoat. And I think it's because I'm married. So that was his small art collection. It's not small. Lots of pre-Raphaelite paintings, quite famous for that. People come from all over to see those. I'll just show you a bit over here, if I can pull over, which is a monument to him, Lord Lever Home himself. If you look up there at the top, you can see a lady with her arms out, and that's, I think it's a lady, that's inspiration. Inspiration's on top of everything. You need inspiration. There's his art gallery. You need inspiration to guide you, and then, according to Lord Lever Home, and now he built all this, so you know he knew a thing or two. You need education, charity, industry, and the lady on the back. Not sure what that is. Can't really see it from here. I'll get off and have a look, shall I? There's such a lazy git. Seem to be able to park okay here. So it actually does feel safe enough to leave your bike, which is unusual in this day and age. So let's see who's that on the back. Oh, art, yeah, of course. It's an art gallery. She's looking at the art. Nice one. So William Hesketh, 1st Viscount Leverhulme. So he started off as him and his brother making soap in Warrington. They got so successful, they decided that he wanted to build a new factory. And not only that, he decided he'd build a new factory and then he'd house all the workers in decent houses like these. And they're in blocks. And each block is different, I think. But they all got a bathroom, which was unheard of back then. This is Victorian times, everyone was living in slums. An outside toilet, a parlour, if you've got the 4-bedroom version, I think. And employed, as I say, 30 different architects to build this village. It was a model village. But to live here, you had to work at the factory. And you had to follow the factory rules. So, I don't know, it sounds good. But what if you didn't like being told what to do? Maybe people are just grateful. We're entitled, aren't we, nowadays? Maybe people were just grateful to have decent housing and a steady job. The problem was, these are tied houses or tied cottages, same as the farmers had in Lincolnshire. If you lost your job, you lost your home. And they took the rent out of your wages, 1/5, I think, of your wages, paid for one of these beautiful places. But as I say, you had to follow the rules of the village, which might be problematic. Anyway, I'll look around, look at one or two things. As always, I'm no expert on these places. Always happy for people in the comments to correct me. But it is quite an extraordinary place, really. All of these houses were for factory workers. Obviously, if you were a boss or a admin or whatever they had then, office workers, you might have got a bigger place. They're all different. Set the context of the Victorian era, to live somewhere like this must have just seemed like heaven. If you could cope with the routines, I guess. Right, so at one point here, I think it was here, there used to be an outdoor heated swimming pool with water from the factory and a gymnasium. Now, whether you were expected to go to the swimming pool and gymnasium by the owner, I don't know, but that's where it was. Now, rather disappointedly, it's a garden centre. There's the school. The place had its own schools, which is still a school. Had its own hospital, which is unheard of. This is before the NHS. Had its own fire station. Had its own venues, theatre. Oh, and all of it, every little bit of it, belonged to the estate. So let's have a look here. Now, it's also, nowadays, it's a venue for Commonwealth war graves, so I've got to be respectful. I'm doing this in the wrong order, I'll edit it, so let's see. So for all his wealth, and he was a fantastically wealthy man at the end of his life with businesses all over the world, we all end up in the same place. Only some of us get a nicer container. There's Lord Leverhulme, there's his wife, Lady Leverhulme, Elizabeth, I think it was, and William. The other brother, the Lever brother, I think he was quite sickly and ill with diabetes or something, so he didn't take part in the business once this place was set up. This is Christ Church, which is the church he left for the village out of his own pocket, not from the factory. So church as well, of course. So here is the war memorial, which is unusual because it has soldiers, as you can see, but it also has children on it and women. And at the time, I think they thought it was a bit odd. It was Lord Leverhulme's own design, I think. But now it's a Grade 1 listed building. It's quite impressive. And you can see the names of factory workers. Those from the offices and the works of the Lever Brothers Limited and their associated companies overseas, and also from Port Sunlight who laid down their lives. So not just people from Port Sunlight. And the story goes, in 1914, 700 male workers, I think they were male, from the train in Chester to the barracks, and off they went to the war thinking it'd be over by Christmas. And I believe that 4 years later, 600 of those 700 at least were dead. And this village became somewhat of a widow's village, I believe, for a time until it recovered. I think also it housed Belgian refugees in World War One. So you can understand why he put so much effort into building this place, because he would have seen the effects not just on the men but also on the families of those bereaved. So I'm outside now, Hulme Hall, which was where, I believe, originally to begin with, the ladies at the factory had their dinner or lunch, as it might have been called. Then it became a venue, and I believe this is the place where Ringo Starr played his first ever gig with the Beatles. There had to be a Beatles link, didn't there? Well, there is. Ringo's first gig here. I think there's also the Beatles' first TV interview was in that room there. But that originally would have been for the ladies at the factory to get their dinner. The ladies of the factory of the Victorious were just passing by. The ladies of the factory of the court. Here is the Bridge Inn, which I've passed once already, which was originally a temperance pub, but although Mr. Lever, or he might have been Lord Lever by then, I don't know, Mr. Lever initially had it at temperance. There was a vote and people decided they wanted alcohol, thank you very much, so it's now just an ordinary pub, and I think it was only a temperance place for a couple of years. So there was some democracy and common sense. As I say, the bridge disappeared. I think the water now, because this was all marshes, drained, and I think the river from that bridge is now underground. So again, this is now the, I believe, the older part of the village. The first houses were built at this end, nearer the factory itself, and you can see there's yet another change of architectural style. Nice places. You can actually buy them now. I think 2/3 of them are actually privately owned, which was only allowed in the 80s. But still a third of them belong to the Port Sunlight Trust, I think, and they're rented out. So you could apply to rent here. I think there's a long waiting list. There's a railway station. Ahead of us there's the factory itself, with Lever House right in front of us. That place. So it all looks very spectacular, but behind there is the factory itself, and I can assure you it went on a long way back, and soap's chemicals, so I can't imagine it was the greatest place to live. Oh yeah, everywhere you look you've got different types of architecture. Now here is what's now called the Gladstone Theatre, that was opened by, I think, by Lord Gladstone himself. But originally this was your feeding place for the men of the factory. I don't know if you can even see that with the sun shining. Now it's a theatre. I think it's been a theatre for a long, long time. But originally that was where you went for your dinner if you were a man working at the Port Sunlight factory itself. Alright. This is some old yard. I mean, a lot of these buildings have been repurposed, as it's called nowadays. You know, they're privately owned. They probably shouldn't be in here, but you can sort of get a view of how it would have been back in late Victorian, Edwardian times. Oh, that is, it looks like stables. So it's called a model village, not because it's the size of Toy Town. It's because it's all the vision of one person. Factory, the houses, the workers. The lives are sort of tightly regulated. A lot of people nowadays want to work from home. This is sort of really, I guess, the ultimate work from home almost. If you live there in one of those houses, look, and you walked across there to the factory, get your dinner in there, go home again, and then take part in whatever after work activities you're instructed to. I can't actually show you the factory as such. It's not a factory anymore. I think it's a research centre, but it still belongs to Unilever. It's still called Unilever Port Sunlight. Oh, here we go. Look at the different houses down here. 1892, so that's 4 years after the factory was built. So that block is like that. This block down here is more ornate again. Look at those. Factory workers' cottages. The other thing that's astounding about this, for its age, for whatever you think of the politics and the darker side of the Lever factory, I think that they were given 10 times the green spaces and space for property than typical slum factory workers in, say, Liverpool. If you look, there's green spaces everywhere. Another style up with sort of bay windows. I wonder if that was for one of the management, and the workers got these ones without. I don't know, I'm only guessing. Still lovely, beautiful places. One last thing I want to look at is this bridge here. This is called the Dell, and you can sort of see where, I can't really park here, but I'll stop just for a second. It's not very good for motorbikes because it's so, the camber on every single road is really steep, so your bike just goes over on its side if you're not careful. I'll try and park like that just for a second. Just have a quick look. I'm sure Lord Leverhome, if he's watching, would approve. Here's a bridge that would have gone over one of the tributaries that went to the Mersey. Long since drained away, I'm guessing. Well, presumably there's a path on it now. At one time the tributary would have run to the Mersey, which presumably over that way. And you can see the ornate bridge, beautiful. This is the Dell, and I believe that that building with the clock is the Lyceum. It's not the Lyceum me and my friends used to go to when we were 18 to see the Clash in London. This is the Port Sunlight Lyceum, which I think was purpose built as a venue. I'm not sure, and it's probably had lots of uses since. Well, this bridge is amazing. Shame there's no water running underneath it, but it does make for a nice path, and you can see it drops away in that direction, presumably towards the Mersey. Don't know if you can see, but over the top of that wall where I just rode along, factory paraphernalia, tanks and things over the top. So quite how pleasant it would have been in there, I do not know. But it's a beautiful place, very, very peaceful. And down here, I think this is the old fire station. Pew, Pew, Barney McGrew, Cuthbert, Dibble, Grubb. But it's now the studio of a famous sculptress, or sculptor. Who is friends with Johnny Vegas. I think he's got a studio there as well, but that's the old fire station. You can sort of imagine the fire engines whizzing out of that. Originally horse-drawn, and then later engines. That's Johnny Vegas now, I think, just going past. Don't know what he does in there. I think he does sculpting. There used to be a bandstand here, but I think it's gone. I like to think it was like the end of Chigley, and that everybody really was happy, but that's probably a overly romanticised sort of view of it, as was much television when I was a kid. Still, you don't want the misery of the world when you're a kid, do you? You've got that to come when you get older. Going down here, down the secret tunnel. Woohoo! Sat-nav's gone bonkers. Obviously didn't know about this bit of the tunnel. God, that sun's bright. Holding up the traffic. Sorry people, you have to wait a second. So, over there where that sunlight is shining, if you can see anything at all, which I can't, there was Port Sunlight, under that sunlight. So, tempers have fujitsu'd. Just a little ride for my local neighbourhood, a mini adventure, the kind of thing you do in December when there's ice on the roads in the mornings, but you've got to keep riding. Hope you enjoyed that. Codge Biker is out.